Today I'm going to show the current version of the Dynasty 2 tool that I'm developing. When you start up the script, or executable when it releases, since I'll be converting it from Python to a Python script to executable so that nobody has to have Python installed, 3 folders will be created: stage mods, unit mods. When you click the folders, they have an enabled folder. That's for mods. Now I'll go ahead and show more of the features of Dynasty. Well, this. So to get to the editors, you click the DW2 button. Now, since I've shown previous videos of the stage data editor and the item editor, I'm not going to cover those. The current version has been having the unit editor and mod manager's code updated with more features. So I'll show off those two in a different video when I have more to show with them. Although what I can tell you is that the stage data editor is going to be similar to this. You name the mod file you want to create. Now, you don't write it with an extension. You can do that if you want, but the way I programmed it is that if you only present a string, so just DFG, it assigns the extension DW2 unit. That way the mod manager can detect the unit mod, and then if it's a stage data mod, it'd be DW2 stage. Those are custom extensions so that the mod manager only detects those for mods. Now you can choose to add an extension, but as I said with the programming, it will ignore this and replace it with the extension. This benefits you and I, so that when the mods are created, they're not getting confused with anything else. With the custom extension, they'll be separated, and they're going to be, when you do create the file, it's going to be created in this one, the unit mods folder, since this is the unit editor. Now let's begin. Just like with the stage data editor, before you begin modding, create the offset files. And currently, when you do finish creating a mod, you need to click create offset files again. Now the reason for that is because when you do the modding, the editor creates this unit template.ref. When you click the create offset files, it creates 3 .ref files. When you do the modding though, it's going to use the reference files. Unit1.ref is to get the data to create unit template, and then unit 2 is used to seek out the offsets within this. This is what you would be editing, and then when you finish editing, you'll create your mod. It'll be put inside one of the folders depending on the editor. And then if you want to create a new mod, you would click create offset files and then repeat the process. Now the reason for that is because for me, with the stage data editor, I was wanting to create new battles, new stages. Well, not new maps, but new battles. I was working on a Yuan Shao versus Gongsun Zon battle for Hulao Gate, replacing all the units, implementing custom officers with new names. And to achieve that, I was replacing all the Yellow Turban Rebellion officers on the Yellow Turban side so that I can use them and then replace their models, motion, colors, horses, and name ID. And it shows it correctly. In fact, I'll go ahead and give you a quick demonstration. It'll be really quick. I'll just show you the example. Okay, good. It's actually, let me go ahead and get my controller. One moment. Alright, I'm back. Plugging it in right now. There we go. I'll go ahead and show you so you have a good visual example of what I mean. I had the volume low so that you can hear my voice more easily. I'm not a very loud speaker, so I actually have to try hard to speak loud enough. Alright, so Hulao Gate, Zhao Yun, and I'll show you the example. So currently, as you see, a lot of the officers have been replaced on what should have been Yuan Shao side, the Allied forces. This is not a complete mod. It's not completed. It was being updated. But Gongsun Zan is set as the leader. I added several new officers because there were several that served under him and fought with him against Yuan Shao. Guanjing, Tian Yu, Tian Kai, Yan Gang, and Zhao Yun apparently served him at some point as well. Gongsun Zhu, Zhang Yan, Gongsun Yu, Gongsun Fan. Now the reason why the Wei officers right there are assigned as his officers is because I haven't gone around to replacing them yet. I was working on this mod in the AMs, very late hours, so I wrapped it up at implementing the officers. And I'll show you quickly how they look so that when I bring up the duplicate subject, you'll have a better understanding. Because a visual example is a lot better than me trying to explain only with words. So as you see right there, Tian Yu and Gongsun Zhu have the same model. They have the same motion, which is their moveset. That glide. Same with Gongsun Yu. Guanjing, Yangang. Now the reason why I did that is because I was wanting to test to make sure they spawned correctly along with the guards. See, even right there. And Gongsun Zan, as you notice, no, that's Gongsun Fan. Okay, so he already left over here. Let me go ahead and go to him, and we'll wrap this up quick so that we can get back to the editor. This just further explains it so that you will understand it better. Where is he? Wow, he's really going pretty far out. Well, either way, you know what Gongsun Zan looks like. He has green armor, and he has green glaive guards with him. So in order to make it as realistic as I can, all of the newly added officers have green armor or green uniform with a spear. It's based on the Shu officers because Gongsun Zan and his forces, his troops, have green armor and uniform just like the Shu faction, Liu Bei and the others. So they do as well. That is why duplicating was helpful, because then you could quickly create those new officers, and then if you want to further edit them, you go from there. Now I'll go back to the editor. So as with the previous video, you click the Enter Unit to modify. It loads the current data that's stored in the template file, which is obtained from the game file. You perform your edits. Now these drop-down lists are references. Since the editor uses integer values, you will not be entering hexadecimal values. If you do, it will cause problems for the editor because it's expecting integer decimal. And that's what these are. You may have seen them with hexadecimal values, but I already went and did all the calculations and conversions to get it to decimal. These are all the unit slots in the unit data that you can edit. Now you do see a big gap, 122 to 126, 126 to 200. I did add all the units in the game to this, but that's just how it is. Like Yuan Shao's majors, Wu majors, Wei majors, they have the same name, and that's major, and their unit major in the unit data also has the same stats. Where it starts to vary is the motion and such, but they generally have the same stats. So that's why you're going to see a big gap right here and to there in some parts throughout. But these store all of the integer values for all of them. So you use those as reference and you type it here. So I want to use, let's say, the major model. All I need to do is type in 29, leave it 0 for Zhao Yun, or no, we'll make it easier. 201 for the name so that we have Corporal Sergeant. Color ID, we'll leave a 0 for this. Motion ID, we will change to Spear Peon, so 20. And then at this point, we would then click Ah, I see. So the alignment may be messed up a little. Originally, when I wrote this unit editor, it used the grid system for placing the buttons and entries. Since then, I've switched to placing the buttons and entries manually so that I can, well, not have to deal with this issue. As you saw, the longer name impacted the alignment of the button and entry. Now you can still, of course, edit it, but it does look less neat, more messy. Let's fix that. There we go. So you probably would want to avoid clicking the long names. All you need to do is just see the number. So then you click Submit Values. Let's go to Guan Yu. Let's just enter random values to speed this up. No, not that high. You're going to want to keep values within 254 for units modify, the unit name ID. And then when it comes to model ID, color ID, and all these, you need to go off of these values. You cannot go above it. Otherwise, you'll end up with wrong values and possibly crash and freeze the game, which would then take time to fix. And if you're low on time or you just don't want to waste time, stick with these values. I've done all the conversions and I've added all of them. And credit goes to Michael and Passion Wagon for that. They originally worked on the unit data, which is this 7 bytes for each unit. I've only enabled 6 for the user to modify because the 7th byte is unknown. And that one wouldn't be important. These are the important ones. The custom name, the custom name would only be applied if you went into the main games file, searched one of these names, so Xiao's Zheng, and replaced it with a new name. Let's say Zheng Yan, like I did. All I would need to do is go in the file, change Xiao's Zheng to Zheng Yan, and then I would keep the unit name ID, because the game already considers Xiao Zheng to be the name with the value of 113. And if you change the name, it's still going to keep the same value. It will just display the current name. It displays the current name, which would be Xiao Zheng in this case, or if you replace it with Zheng Yan, then Zheng Yan. But these are strings that I've manually added to the code, the program. I programmed these into the editor, so they're not going to reflect the current values. These are the original values, and then you would go from there. But the only things you would really change that would apply to the bin file to make custom would be the name ID. You can't really enter custom models, motions, colors, and horses. Now you can edit textures and change how they appear and add new textures, but that's for a different time. So submit values, then to verify the changes did happen, if you want to double check, all you gotta do is go to type in the unit ID or the unit to modify, click enter unit to modify, and it will show you what you previously entered. I've made sure to thoroughly test this. And same if you go back to Guan Yu or someone further in. Oh, not that far. That is way too far. See, because... I guess it's... Yeah. Well, stay within this value range, otherwise you may have problems if you begin modding beyond that. Because this actual temp file only contains all the units from the unit data. If you go beyond that, I don't know what's going to happen with that. I haven't tried messing with that. But, let's see. So when I was creating those additional officers to add to Gong Sun-zan's battle with Yuan Shao, Tian Yu, Tian Kai, and all the others, I would seek out a Shu officer that already exists. So for example, right here, Yan Yan. He's a Shu officer that appears later on. I would keep the model ID, color ID, motion, all this, and I would change the name in the main file, the games file, and it would reflect the change because the value stays the same. It's the name that will change if you change it, which is good if you want to add custom officers. Now, if you're wanting to create new officers, custom officers, you will have to replace officers when you add them to a battle. Even when you set them to an NPC officer, set the bytes correctly, the values correctly, the name will only display if it's an existing officer. If it's an officer. So if you create an officer, you have to replace one of the officer name IDs. It won't work by replacing the troop names, such as Lady Captain, Lady Guard. You would still be able to spawn the unit, but they'd be nameless. So, to do the quick duplicating, instead of just, going to each one individually and then entering all these one by one, what you do is you go to the unit to modify that you want to use as a duplicate to duplicate to other units, so that you would then, be able to replicate what I did or whatever your idea would be, which is adding custom officers. If you want to add custom officers, you don't have to. This editor allows you to edit the existing data. You're not required to create custom officers. That's only if you would like to. It supports that capability. But then you would go to the unit you would want to replace. So in our case, since we're replacing, Yellow Turban Rebellion officers, we go to Pei Yuan Shao, which is 91. So we type in 91, but we don't click enter unit to modify. That will tell the reader to seek, Pei Yuan Shao's data and then display it. We don't want to do that. So you type in the unit to modify you want to replace, and then instead of clicking that, click submit values. And then let's do it to Cheng Yuan Ji. So we type in 88 and we repeat the process, submit values. So then when you go back to Yan Yan, which is 119, click enter unit to modify, unless you're doing a different duplicate or something. This is his original data still because we have not changed it. But then when you go to 88, the values are the same. That's because instead of reading Cheng Yuanji's current data or original data, we duplicated the values from Yan Yan by clicking submit values to Cheng Yuanji. I may be repetitive if I keep going on about that, so we'll move on to, who is the other one? Pei Yuan Shao. So then, to show you as well, it also duplicated to Pei Yuan Shao. Now you can do this to every unit to modify if you wanted to. I'm only showing a few because I created 8 new officers. So I duplicated Yan Yan or one of the Shu officers' data to 8 different units or 8 officers from the Yellow Turban side of Yellow Turban Rebellion. And then when you have finished creating the mod or mods that you would like to, type in the file name you would like to use. So let's say file 1. And then again, you can type in an extension, but it's kind of pointless because it's still going to get replaced so that the mod manager correctly loads it. It's faster for you and I to just type in the name you want to use. Create mod file. It will then create it in unit mods right here. And then when you have the mod manager going, you would then enable it and it would create it in the enabled folder. And it would then apply that to the game so that your mod's implemented. Now you can keep this up and create more mods. The thing with that though is if you want to start with fresh data instead of, the currently changed data, you would exit and then click create offset files when you're back on it. But if you want to just continue to work with what's already open and you don't mind spending a little bit of extra time changing, then all you'd have to do is, do your edits again. So let's change it. No, not that. 65. And then now create mod file again. And you can keep doing this. I just prefer to exit and then open it again and then create offset files so that we have, the original fresh data that the game started with, so that we don't have to worry about changing the units that we edited already. We could just pick and choose which ones. And by doing it this way, where you create separate mods instead of applying it directly to the bin without having different mods, you'll be able to have if you had different ideas, like let's say you want Zhao Yun to have the sergeant appearance and moveset so that you can play as him. That's good. Then you would create that if you wanted. Then if you wanted to change it to where he, let's say, uses a pike that the sergeants use and he takes the appearance, rather than replace the mod 1 that you created, you could do that if you wanted to. You could. Or you could create a separate file, which would be file 2 in this example, so that when you open the mod manager, you can then tell it to use mod or file 1, which would have his, well, the example I gave first, and then if you want to use file 2 instead, it would use the sergeant with the pike for Zhao Yun. That way you have options. You don't have to worry about editing an existing file unless you want to. You can just choose between the different mods that you create. So that all you have to do is click, and I'll just show you real quick. Go to Mod Manager, in this case, Unit Mods. Now the stage data editor is going to function the same with this in creating the mod files. Quick and easy so that you don't have to put a lot of work into it. The biggest goal of these editors, the Dynasty Wars 2 tool and the Mod Manager, was to allow modders and non-modders to have an easy time of modding the data with a graphical user interface, because this is more friendly to use than if you're reading the data in a hex editor. And you can do that. You can do what you can do in this manually if you want. This can be considered faster in some cases and more pleasant for some. For me, it's more pleasant, and I'll show you in a moment why. So when you're ready to enable the mod, click the Enable Unit Mod button. Go to the folder you have these files stored in, Unit Mod, and because we have the W2 unit extension, when you're selecting the file, it's already going to detect it. And I removed the capability to have the other files shown so that you don't accidentally click the wrong thing. You would only have the mods. So then you would load it. Now I have 5 or 6 more lines of code to add to tell the mod manager to apply that to the game. And that's not going to take long at all. It's not complicated. I wanted to make this video quick since I said I would give an update soon. And then I'll show in the next update video when it actually applies to the game. It's not hard for this editor to do. I only left out 5 to 6 lines of code so that I could quickly show this. It'll be easy and straightforward for me. And then you'd be able to disable the mod so that you can play the vanilla, unmodded game if you wanted to. But yeah, so now I will show you the example about if you're doing this with raw data instead. So instead, let's see. Yeah, I'll just show the template instead. This takes the unit data from the main game and creates it in here so that it's only having to work with the unit data, not the entire file. That'd be a lot of data to manage. But as you see right here, this can be less pleasant for some or maybe even a lot of people. You're dealing with a lot of random bytes here, a lot of bytes, a lot of values. Each unit is 7 bytes long. If you somehow made a mistake and typed in the wrong values or clicked the wrong thing or lost your place, it would be messed up. And if you don't have the unit slots memorized, you could think you're editing Sao, but you actually you're editing a different person entirely. It's just easier. That was my biggest reason to create this editor, to provide easy access to modding for modders and non-modders. Because there are people that want to have mods, but they don't want to learn the process of modding, and I don't blame them. This is a lot to learn, and the main games file is significantly larger with more data. Reverse engineering and modding manually takes a lot of time, and what if you're limited on time, You don't have a whole lot of time to spare to spend hours learning. And it's easier to make mistakes if you're doing it manually, if you lose your place like I do. In one of the previous videos, I had to correct myself several times because I lost my place in thousands of data, bytes, values. But back to the non-modders talk. There are people that, like in the Muso Warriors Discord server, I've seen people request mods and giving mod ideas, and they may not want to actually create the mod themselves, but they would, want it made. So for someone who doesn't want to learn the modding, but has a mod they want created and, nobody else is doing it, you could then just use the editor and, go from there and use the stuff. This is very easy to understand. Entries. I gave the labels. I gave all the IDs that you can use so that you don't have to do any conversions. It's all here. It's very user-friendly so that even the non-modder who doesn't really want to learn a whole lot about modding to make mods or have the mods they want, it's to make it easier. That's my biggest goal. I want it for everyone. I want everyone that wants to use it to have an easy time using it. And as I said with the stage data editor and the item editor, I've shown them in previous videos, and since I haven't further updated them, I didn't want to show them in this video. I didn't want to make this video extremely long. But when I do have further updates to them, I will show that as well, and then a complete video that shows all the features, which would be a lengthier video, but it'd be worth it, I believe. And I will continue working on those, but I focus the majority of my time on the mod manager and the unit editor. Currently, it's at 630 lines of Python code, and it's going to be several thousand lines long, especially when I start enabling like error detection so that if somehow someone did mess up, they can see what went wrong instead of not knowing at all. Now, one thing I do have to ask anybody that's interested in using this to do, please do not modify these files, the .refs that are created, not just for the unit data, but anything else. In fact, and when I say please don't modify them, I mean outside of the editor. When you're using the editor, it's fine because it's programmed to work properly and correctly with the data and with the files. It creates them. I made it. But if you chose to manually edit these with a hex editor or however else outside the editor, it's very likely you could mess up the editor and wrong data could be edited. The wrong data could be applied to the wrong offsets because the mod manager has to apply these mods directly into the main game and at the correct offsets they're at. And I don't even have them all specified of the offsets inside the file. The editor knows automatically where to put them in the file. So if you were to edit these manually, you could very likely mess it up and your game could become frozen or crash. So please, if I may ask, do not try to modify the files this editor creates manually. Allow the editor to do it for you. It will save you time and trouble and... well, yeah, I mean, that's the point of these files. They're made for the editor to edit. If you try doing it manually, it's a problem. But going on about that any longer would be repetitive. And I can be repetitive sometimes in these videos. But that's all I have to show. I hope you have a great day, and I hope this video was good at explaining and that it appeals to y'all. And I'll release update videos soon as well. I'd like to finish up the editor soon and then move on to Dynasty Warriors 5, Extreme Legends, and Empires. I really want to mod Destiny mode in Extreme Legends and build an editor for it. I want to see what all we can do. And from my understanding, there's quite a bit we can do. So that's going to be fun and interesting to do. And for everybody that did give documentation, because this editor was able to be made by the existing documentation, there were a lot of things that were found out that I wouldn't have found out as easily or even at all, because this game has been modded for years, and with those years you start learning a whole lot of things, and the documentation helps a lot. So whether I could have learned on my own or not is irrelevant. What's important is credit. So credit also goes to Michael, Pashwagon, Ariv, The Tempest, and anyone else who contributed to DW2 documentation. I've contributed some, but the reason this editor was able to be made as easily is thanks to them. They put in the hard work. So it's accurate to say it's also their editor. I wrote the code, I did the programming, but all the features were able to be enabled because of their research and documentation. It's possible I could have found out some of it on my own, but I don't think all of it. So big credit goes to them. In fact, most of the credit should go to them. All I did was create this and wrote it. But again, thank you for your time, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day.